Well, are you ready for your life to expand a little bit? That's the astrological symbolism coming up. We're going to talk about another big major thing in the sky when Jupiter moves into the sign of Cancer. And we have a great episode lined up and planned out for you. But before we get into that, Robert, obviously I'm in my Sprinter van, Lord Jupiter, and I'm rumbling through the southeast at a place called Nakalula Falls. It's in the little Mayberry town of Gadsden, Alabama. This is a place that I came to back in the 80s and 90s when I was doing the Bassmaster show, and I always remembered I just liked the place and I wanted to come check it out now, and it's still just as cool. Unfortunately, they've had some economic challenges here, but check out these waterfall pictures. I mean, there's a 90-foot waterfall right behind my van. I got to throw the doors open last night and listen to it, and it is just absolutely gorgeous.
You're making me jealous. I've always wanted to live in a van. Now you are.
Well, sort of.
For a time, yeah. It looks
So,
beautiful.
yeah, it's just the falls are amazing, and the Cherokee named it Nakalula. There's two legends as to how they named it. One is thunder from water. Well, that makes sense. Obviously, it's just a beautiful sound, and I can hear it all the way up here. But the other one is kind of interesting. There's a lore that a Cherokee young maiden jumped off the falls to avoid an appointed marriage. And her father named the falls Nakalula after her. I don't know. That one sounds more like a bot on Twitter to me, but at least thunder from water works. Okay, we have some important business at hand astrologically. Jupiter, as we said, is getting ready to move into the sign of Cancer. And let's take a look at a chart, actually, to get this started so that we know what we're looking at and talking about. This chart, first of all, to kind of get our bearings, is for June 9th, 2025, and it's set to Universal Greenwich, England. That gives us the platform for any of you to listen to it on equal ground. And obviously, this is set to where Cancer is on the cusp of the first house. So why don't you pick up from there, and let's see what this is going to mean in our lives.
Well, two things. We know that Jupiter's cycle is 12 years. So, among other things, we're going to be talking about themes today related to this ingress of Jupiter into Cancer. But go back in your life if you can. If you can remember the big themes that were going on around 2013 in your life, these will relate to that same period. So we're talking about Jupiter. Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer, so already we're off to a head start. The period of the duration of its stay in Cancer is from now through next June. So you've got a year to work with this amazing and wonderful, and I'm very grateful for this ingress into Cancer. So a couple of things we're going to be talking about right off the bat. Jupiter, which rules expansion, opportunity, success, travel even, legal documents, contracts. It has a lot to do with business. Jupiter will be in Cancer for this 1 year, but the first thing that it does is to square the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. And then it inconjuncts Pluto in Aquarius. So the transition that Jupiter in Cancer signifies has to do with everybody's security. And right off the bat, in June and July, we have these hard aspects from transiting Jupiter to Saturn and Neptune and then to Pluto. So these 2 months, June and July, will be where the challenges to all of us hit. And then our response to these challenges determines the rest of Jupiter and Cancer's stay. So whatever frustrations you may have or challenges you may have, if you resolve those, then you're free to move on. Jupiter moves on away from that square and that inconjunct to some wonderful aspects. So there's a lot to look forward to here. Thomas, why don't you throw in some of your 2 cents worth?
Well, I am so looking forward to this aspect of this transit because, as you said, go back to 2013. My mind went back to 2 messages I got from my inner soul, intuition. One was to start a podcast, and I did on Easter Sunday, 2013. My mom had just transitioned, and there was this just overwhelming. I couldn't get it out of my head. Start a podcast. I was like, what am I going to talk about? I don't have anything to talk about. My second original episode was how to get rid of the hiccups through a yoga pose. I'm not kidding. I had nothing. But I started the podcast. And then in the summer of 2013, this little tap on my shoulder, very clear, said, email Fred Dodson about narrating his audiobooks. That year changed my entire life. And one of the things that I like about it, and I know there are so many things that we can pick apart here. We have Jupiter and all that it covers, Cancer as ruler of the fourth house and all that covers, and then Cancer as the sign and everything that it represents. So there's a lot that's going on here. But one of the little subtleties that I like to consider, wherever Cancer shows up, don't forget it's ruled by the moon. And the moon is all about our intuition. Neptune too, but I like to also bring the moon into that. So for me, this is also going to be an amplified time of intuition. And I got to tell you, I can't wait. I think we're feeling it now. But I am a little bit concerned. Let's go back to the chart and let's talk about these hard aspects that you were talking about. Because I like the way you said here that we need to resolve these. So let's talk about this one first. This is this square up to, and we already know a lot of people. You and I did the video on Saturn moving into Aries. We talked about Neptune as well. So if you guys haven't heard or seen that video, we'll put a link to it in the description of this video so you can go back and watch that here on YouTube. And we talked about that extensively, so we don't need to cover what Saturn in Aries means. But I would like to talk more about how Jupiter squaring it might make a difference for us.
Well, you know, one of the things that you mentioned, the transition of your mother. People forget, many of us do, that Jupiter is the old Chaldean ruler of Pisces before we discovered telescopes and Neptune. Pisces is a double sign. It's a wonderful sign for many reasons. It's also a sign of loss and sorrow. And when this transiting Jupiter squares that Saturn-Neptune, many of us are likely to experience in some measure a sense of loss and sorrow. It could be in terms of your career or your work. It could be in terms of brother and sister or a relative, a family member, a parent. It could be in terms of your home and where you live. Because Jupiter in Cancer is showing a major and ultimately very positive shift in what you consider to be your security. So losing a parent is a big one because we're born to them, they've been living. You don't really think about them dying, but everybody does. And so the idea of some sort of figurative or literal death accompanying this, and this could be over the next couple of months, it probably will be figurative in terms of job changes, job insecurity, even finances, bank stuff. So be very careful, for example, of scam artists online. I fell for this a couple or 3 years ago. So can you. So be very careful about what you click on. You don't want to support some Nigerian prince who lives in Detroit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
they've gotten better too.
It's a very idealistic aspect. It's asking you to think big and to think positively about what you really are attuned to. As Thomas just mentioned, this is an intuitive sign, Cancer. It's irrational. It has nothing to do with logic or reason. But if there is a dream, a goal that you have, and part of you thinks, oh, I could never do that. Yes, you could. So be willing to not only entertain these kinds of visions, dreams, and hopes that you have, but to begin to take tangible steps toward getting to them. Is this making sense, Thomas?
No, it is very much. And the thing that I think that a lot of us have been experiencing, and we talked about, and there were a lot of comments in that video that we did about Saturn entering Aries, that indicated that people know that changes are taking place here. And one thing I wanted to show them, Robert, I've been doing this on my Fun Astrology podcast. If you guys want to follow this for your own chart, what you can do is put your natal chart up as a wheel, just like this. This chart is set to Cancer on the ascendant point, so it's a little bit different. We're doing that on purpose so that this area is the Cancer ingress. But what you can do is find that 0 point of Cancer on your own chart. And this is whether you use Equal House or Whole Sign or Placidus or whatever. Just find 0 Cancer and make a mark like that. And then find 0 Aries and make a mark like that. And then find 0 Aquarius and make a mark. And that will give you this context of this, what we're calling this Great Pyramid, but put Cancer at the top so that you can see where these other points are. And that will give you an idea of where these squares are, the square and the inconjunct over to Pluto that he's talking about. And that way you can bring it home to see how it's going to affect your life. What house is it in? What other aspects are there? What planets are in that house? All of that is included. But I think that will help give you more meaning as you're listening through this, is to know where those points are in your own chart.
Another thing to consider with this, Thomas, with Jupiter's square to Saturn and Neptune at the top of the chart, is what do you consider your family? Is it a group of friends? Is it people you work with? Is it your real blood family, and so on? This is a square aspect. It's going to test you, especially here in June and July. And the reason for the tests is to make you stronger. So don't avoid them. But this is a classic indication of a time in your life to be highly aware of toxic people and toxic situations. This is both personally and professionally. And be willing to remove yourself from those people and those situations. You can do it maturely and adultly. You don't have to be a jerk about it. You don't have to create a lot of drama around it. But you do have to determine who you spend time with and how much time you do spend with them. And people who maintain situations with, for lack of a better word, losers or toxic people are not going to do well under these aspects. This is a time to be willing to clean up, both literally and figuratively, which means prioritize your life. What's more important, this or that? And to do this very consciously, because your security, quote unquote, in capital letters, is what's really being emphasized by Jupiter's year-long transit into Cancer. And you can absolutely, we all can, establish a brand new level of security for ourselves that will go on for another 12 years if we pay attention to astrology. How do you feel about that?
Well, of course, you're also bringing the 4th house into this, because 4th house is home and family, and that's that point of security as well. So the thing that, to me, first of all, I completely agree. And you know that I've kind of adopted this mantra of live your highest timeline. And that can seem a little bit like, what's he talking about? But if you just think about high timeline, that's kind of a buzzword. And I pulled it out of the sky. I mean, I kept hearing it and I thought, living your highest timeline, well, that takes you to every area of your life, literally. How about your health, your relationships, your job, your career, your kids, your family? Like everything that's under the umbrella of you can come under. Am I playing my highest game, or am I fiddling around, or am I playing a low game over here? And you know the old saying, you become like the 5 people you spend the most time around. So what you're saying here and what the sky is indicating to us is be careful who those 5 are, because under this, it's going to expand. And I know that a lot of people, since really going back to 2020 and COVID and the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which was another shift and a pivot, that a lot of people have had prunings in their lives already. People who are not on the same timeline energetically, the same vibration, are falling away. They're finding their way out naturally. So I think and it's hard losing friends. you sitting there, I'm still just like, the ones that I've lost, several to death, permanent. Like, we're not, no do overs. That's hard. And I've got a very good friend who's a podcast listener who lost a lifelong childhood friend. And she was just like, her jaw was on the floor, like, how could this happen? And yet, these vibrations are not compatible. And so people are finding their way away. But then also, because of that square, what might come as the knock on our own soul's door is, are you willing to let this go naturally? Are you willing to do what you need to do to live on your highest timeline, even if it makes you face a difficult decision? And that's what you're talking about, not where it's easy, something happens externally. No, it brings it in. It's an action thing, because that's what Aries is all about, you taking action. So when you feel that conflict that we've been talking about, the quote unquote war, well, that battle might be in your own heart with what you're going to choose. So choose wisely, choose high timeline.
Too, in connection with possible deaths like yours, with your mother,
Mm-hmm.
if you do lose someone under this aspect, it's an external symbol. Move on. You cannot go back. Move on with regard to whatever that person symbolizes or meant in your life. It's another way of saying grow up. This is over. Also, if they were toxic people who happen to die and move on, that too is ending for you.
Mm.
There are a couple of areas in particular with this position of Jupiter's ingress into Cancer to consider. One is your work and your occupation. For many people, these will be changing over the next year. Now, you don't have to change fields, but you may be expanding what you already do into something even greater, building on what you've already got going. The other area is higher education of some kind. It doesn't necessarily mean getting a master's or a PhD, although it could, but any kind of license, diploma, or certificate, some kind of training, even in computers, might behoove you to take advantage of. Go to a local community college. A lot of people, for example, communications are very stressed with this because Mercury is right there along with Jupiter. So people are thinking about, I want to be a writer. Great. Go to community college, take a course or two in writing so that you're getting critiqued from a professional. Don't just show your brilliant writing or your article, your novel to friends. They're not professional writers. They don't know what they're doing. You want to get feedback from somebody that can really help you become a better writer. So going back to school or getting some further training or education is another tool in your toolbox that it would really pay you to think about acquiring during this coming year. The third area, travel, either abroad or nationally, but travel. And this can mean going to conventions, for example, with like minded people. If you have a hobby that you're thinking about turning into an avocation or a secondary income stream, maybe there'll be group meetings or conventions that you can go to and not only learn a lot, but network with people.
Well, you brought several things into that, a little bit of ninth house there at the end, but I'd like to come back to the fourth house, which you've taught us over the years that one of the indications, one of the meanings, and we can go back to Mark Edmund Jones' Horary Astrology book that is quoted so much here about the end of the matter in the fourth house. Now, we know, and in fact, in episodes that you and I have done here on death as well, that Jupiter can be present during the indications of a death. But let's talk more also about end of the matter when we consider Jupiter amplifying the fourth house.
Well, you've raised a really important point. For one thing, this Jupiter square to Saturn and Neptune is an opening square, a fourth house square. That is different than a 10th house culminating square. A fourth house square, Thomas is right, it's the end of the matter. It's also new beginnings. It's the house of endings and beginnings. So you can't cling to what is naturally ending. That's kind of a fool's errand and a waste of time. Your mother dies. You can't go back and bring her back. So you have to go on. If a job dies or a friendship dies, it's gone. So don't linger over trying to mourn it too much or try to get it back. Move on and build on what that friendship or that job meant to you. You learned something from it. So pay attention to this Jupiter ingress into Cancer is forming an opening square. Another thing, because Cancer does rule the home and the family, are moves. I know we had one comment back in the Saturn in Aries thing. She had just moved, and this happened to be someone that I've known for years. She moved from California back to New York, or back to Maryland, actually, the East Coast, for the first time in, I don't know, 40 years. Big move. So, Cancer being new starts, the home, the family, that's also a theme that's being activated by this transit of Jupiter. And so, if you feel it's time to move, literally, this can be a very good time to do it. Same goes with buying or selling property. These are strange times when it comes to real estate. And yet, for those of you who are in the market to either buy or sell property, pay close attention to what's going on in the market. And you can find a good, either way, you can find a good buyer if you're trying to sell. You can also find a good deal if you're trying to buy. So that's another indication or a thematic indication of this Jupiter transit, this ingress into Cancer, Thomas.
There's something else I wanted to talk about. You just mentioned it. You mentioned the Jupiter-Saturn square. Well, they conjoined back in December 2020 in the sign of Capricorn. And now here we are. And I mean, it's right there. And as you said, it's not only when it goes in, it is bam when it goes in. It's like pow, pow. It's like that is square to Saturn. And that's a super significant square. I know Ray Merriman, I do some work with him on the Saturday Financial Podcast on Fun Astrology and his 2025, his annual forecast books. That was mentioned a lot in there, affecting the financial markets, but it will affect all of our lives as well. So can you talk around that square? That is super important.
Well, I'd like to leave the financial end up to you, but the personal end of this, for example, this same Jupiter square to Saturn and Neptune, this opening square related to home and family, people wanting to get married and have children. Now, this can be for the rest of us who are not looking to get married or have a baby, it can be having a figurative baby or a creative baby, starting your own self employment business, for example. But there are couples who are thinking about getting married, couples who are thinking about having a baby, and there can be complications involved with this, especially these next couple of months. There can also be couples who are wanting to get married, wanting to form a new family, whose own families don't like the other partner. In other words, you can be in love with somebody that your family doesn't approve of or things. So you may run into those kinds of conflicts that, again, simply have to be resolved maturely. You don't want to get into childish dramas over all this. But love is love. And this is one of those aspects that can find people falling in love with somebody from a completely different background, a different nationality, a different religion, a different race. And it can be wonderful, but it can also stir up a lot of worry and doubt and even negativity among other family members. So the challenge becomes, as with the rest of all this, be true to yourself. You're going to have choices in through here. Am I going to follow what other people want me to do for this year coming up in terms of my life, my work, my love life? Or am I going to be true to myself? And that's the challenge.
That emphasizes again why I kind of went with this theme of living your highest timeline, because in just a little mantra that you can recycle in your head all the time, you could say, am I following my highest timeline? Am I responding in my highest timeline? I caught myself with something that I've dragged a habit through my life. It's how I respond to things. And I just the other day stopped and said, I'm going to, when something frustrating comes up, let's say, instead of, a good old Scorpio reaction, Instead, I'm going to act like it was the most marvelous, wonderful thing in the world that just happened and respond that way. So it's just these little tweaks that you can look through your life and up your game, up your game, up your game. You've heard this before. All the performance coaches say if you can just improve 10%, just a little incremental improvement every day, every day, every day, you're notching the bar up. It sounds like that's what if we were to summarize this in one capsule of everything, of all of these areas of our life, it would be that up your game, up your game, up your game, live your highest timeline.
Good point. And in following that along, Thomas, this aspect, this square from Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, is prime time for scammers and people who will fall for scammers. It's a classic aspect of self delusion and trying to escape responsibility. You can't get something for nothing, and anybody promising you the moon, you're not going to get it. Saturn, I call the get real planet for a reason. As long as you are being real, you'll be fine under Saturn. But when
Hmm.
somebody comes along and promises to add $10 million to your checking account, if you will only give them your banking account number over in Nigeria, don't. So you have to be real about this stuff or you will lose. And maybe for some
Hmm.
people, losing is the big lesson they need to learn in this period. And if that is the case with you and you do lose or you are deceived, learn from it. Don't ever fall for this line again. This can apply in romance as well as in work and business. So things that sound too good to be true are once you get past July, June and July, this transit from Jupiter is going to be operating much more in your favor. So these are the 2 months that are kind of critical in that sense.
Another tag on that, how not to get scammed, is don't be coming from a place of desperation on anything right now. That's how it's easier because you can lean into. I just did some editing on an audio book for a client, and there was a story. There was a life or death situation. Her husband had been diagnosed with ALS, and he was terminal, and he did die. But they tried to go to the Dominican Republic for some unapproved medical treatments that ended up when they got back from this very expensive trip and procedures. That place was on 60 Minutes. Scott Pelley was doing a story on it about how it was questionable. So just be careful. And I mean, they were desperate. They would have done anything to try to improve the situation. And yet, a lot of people, as she's quoted in the book, tried to tell them otherwise, and they went on with it. So just don't do anything because you feel like you have no other alternative. And that's another point I'd like to ask. Because Cancer is ruled by the moon, we know, and ask anybody who lives on a beach about the moon, right? The tides change every 6 hours. The moon is always changing. It's changing signs fast. You were mentioning a minute ago there might be changes in a job. Well, is this going to be a kind of a time compression period so that if somebody loses a job, maybe the next opportunity, like get your resume ready because the next one might be right around the corner.
Yeah, I think that's true. But it's also, this is a 1 year transit, basically, of Jupiter going through Cancer. And the real message here, if you are fired, let's say, or the company you work for goes under or is bought by somebody else, if you lose a job, the message is not just go out, as you mentioned, don't go out desperately looking to become a clerk at 7-Eleven. If you have some
Exactly.
savings, think about what you really want to do. And even if it's not practical, but it's something in your heart and your soul that you've always thought about doing, begin to Saturn, Neptune, work on and visualize a step by step way to get there. Start small. And the same thing is true for the naysayers in your life. I want to do this. I want to be whatever it is. I want to be this. And all of your friends, all of your family say, are you nuts? You can't do that. And they will. They will put you down. They may never support you doing it. And there the test is, okay, am I going to be true for myself, to myself, or am I going to live my life for other people and what they want me to do? And that's a very self-negating choice to make. You can live your best self in your highest timeline for yourself, and it will accrue the benefits to everybody around you because they will ultimately see, wow, he or she is very happy and they're doing well. They're keeping food and shelter. They're making a living, doing something they love. I guess we were wrong. So they'll come around. But that's not what you live for. You don't live for other people to come around. You live for what you truly feel in your heart and soul is your highest timeline.
I love what you said there. You caught the point that I was making a minute ago was don't be desperate. Don't be in a hurry. If you have a little money tucked away, this is the time to kind of lean into Jupiter's expansion. Jupiter is the planet of good luck in a sense. Lean into that and be picky and choose what you want to be doing. Oh, that's the perfect way to wrap this up. I think we covered a lot of the elements of this. Obviously, there are more, but there is a lot that is bundled in what we just talked about. And I think that going back to that waterfall and leaving with the thunder from the water is a good way out. If you'd like to talk to Robert about how this would show up in your own life, his link to readings is in the description there. You can book that. We have a plethora of videos that we've started on this channel, and then we also have all the back archives on the Fun Astrology channel, so you can check that out. And on your way out, please hit the subscribe button. We'd love to have you back.
I'm looking at this waterfall and where Thomas is, wishing I were there, wishing I had a van, wishing I were living and working out of the van. I'm trying very hard not to be envious and jealous because this is something that comes up. What a great place to be today, Thomas.
So one of the things that I hope that you'll be seeing soon is what we're doing right here is recording this out of the van. But Robert, the one thing you got to see, and you'll have to see it in this other camera over here, is that this is survival mode because I am in Alabama in June and it is hot and the air conditioners are not running because it is loud. But what survival is a sleeveless shirt and swim trunks to record the podcast. But I just wanted to show everybody the van setup and how we've got the camera, the lights. And I mean, this is the thing about technology today is it just all of this stuff works. And it's amazing what we can do now. And I just wanted to show everybody I'm having a blast. I got to tell you, I am having an absolute blast.
Good for you.
All right. Thank you.
All right,
good
friend.
podcast.
Next time.
Next time we'll be at your place.
That's right. That's
Headed
right.
to you.
I'm presenting you with a special award, which only you know about.
Can't wait.
Not going to say another word.